Welcome back, Cycling Magazines, part 2. And now we move on to Pro Cycling. Pro Cycling comes out monthly and it costs, sorry I can't see this, £5.50. Shit, £5.50. And Pro Cycling, as the name suggests, concentrates on the pro end of the cycling sport. So there are in-depth articles about the great races, whether they're the stage races or week-long races or the classics, interviews with top cyclists, occasional reviews of kit, but more in terms of a few photos of kit rather than in-depth reviews. And every issue there's an article about some aspect of a great or sometimes not so well-known cyclist from the past. And they have a wonderful archive of photos. If you're interested in the pro cycling end of the sport, it is an excellent magazine. It is very nicely produced. The photography is superb. The writers all know their stuff. Recently they've had a big increase in coverage of women's pro cycling, which is great. There wasn't much previously. And in terms of an understanding and awareness of the pro cycling scene, some in-depth analysis, some critical assessment of, for example, the finances of the sport, this is a very good magazine. There is a lot to read and it's well worth buying. There is a monthly column by Jens Vogt, who I sometimes read and I sometimes don't. Good one. Cyclist magazine, which comes out again monthly and costs well, I get it on subscription delivered, and this doesn't have the price on it for some reason, but I have a feeling it's £5.50 and it may be a little bit more. And it's very nicely produced. There is always, and this is their kind of signature, if you like, a ride somewhere, generally but not always in Europe. Sometimes a well-known destination, quite often a lesser-known destination. This month's issue is about southern Spain, so well-known, but perhaps not as well-known as Mallorca or Tenerife or Sardinia, one of the other great cycling islands. There is always some stuff about kit, as usual. There's usually some in-depth analysis, some articles about some aspect of cycling, of the sport. It doesn't just concentrate on the pros, it doesn't just concentrate on amateurs. It isn't just about how do I get into cycling, or what's the best way of descending, or what's the difference between a pair of bib shorts and a pair of shorts that don't have bibs on them. It's nicely done, it's nicely produced, it's nicely written, the photographs are good. It's a big, nice, thick magazine, and it's not all adverts, so there is a lot to read in here. It's nice. If you're going to buy a monthly cycle magazine and you're not obsessed with the sport, in which case you'd probably want pro cycling, this is a good one to get. Its monthly column is by Felix Lowe, who is quite a good writer, not somebody I'm particularly familiar with. So they haven't gone for, a famous columnist, if you like, but he produces some good stuff. And if you can see here, the pictures are nice. There, I hope you can get a good feel of that, good view of that. This is about Barbados, cycling on Barbados, island time. There you are. So it tells you all you need to know if you're thinking of going to Barbados for the weekend to do a bit of cycling. Not bad, nice one. We now move on to some magazines which perhaps are a little less well known, slightly more unusual perhaps, and I'm going to start with one of my favourites actually, and that is Simpson. magazine. There's a couple of reasons why it's one of my favourites. First of all, they were kind enough to publish a couple of articles that I've written, so I'm always going to look with favour upon them. But it's produced by a couple of guys who are clearly passionate about cycling. It's not just about pro cycling, it's not just about amateur cycling, it's not just about going fast, it's not just about going slow, it's just about cycling, I suppose. It's nicely produced, it's nicely written, the photographs are good, and I'm not just talking about my own articles. It's a great little magazine, but it has a couple of problems. Well, I don't know if you'd call them problems. One is it costs £6, which is a lot of money, although not surprising for a small publication that doesn't carry a great many adverts. But the other thing is it's very difficult to get hold of, and one does wonder why a cycling magazine, which presumably they want to sell, is very difficult to buy. Hard to see how they're going to increase their circulation with that approach. I know it's perhaps available now in a few more shops, but it's not generally available in newsagents. Perhaps not unsurprising, it's not got a big sale, and presumably newsagents want a certain volume of publications before they'll stock them. So there's a sort of chicken and egg, slightly vicious circle problem there. But it is available from their website, Simpson CC or Simpson.cc, I'm not sure. Obviously named after, Tom Simpson. Don't think it's named after The Simpsons. Don't think it's named after Wallace Simpson, so I guess it must be Tom Simpson. It's a nice magazine. It comes out sort of every 2 months. Sometimes it seems to be a bit more regularly. Sometimes it seems to be a bit less regularly. There's not many people involved in producing it, and I think they both have full-time jobs, so they don't have the time to devote to putting it together. But if you can find it, or if you've got £6 to spare, which you don't want to waste on Cycling Plus, then go on their website, buy a copy. It's a nice little magazine. Next we have Peloton, and Peloton is an American magazine. One shouldn't feel too badly about them because of that, it's not their fault. It's an American magazine and it's very nicely done. Very nicely produced, nice photographs, nice articles, although not always particularly readable articles. They have a house style, which, let's face it, every magazine has, but their house style can seem a little impenetrable at times. They do have sections on kit, but they're not obsessed with kit. It's not a bikes, etc. Type of magazine. They like travel, unusual for Americans, but they like going to Europe, which a lot of Americans do actually. Every month there's something about wine. Not quite sure why. I'm not quite sure the connection between cycling and wine, but anyway, there's usually an article about a winery in France or California. So if you want to go to a winery in France or California, this will often tell you which one to go to. But it's a nice magazine. It's nicely produced, very nice photographs. If you're familiar with the work of the Grubers, Gerard and Ashley Gruber, they are one of their key photographers, if you like, and they have some very nice pictures in here. You can get it mail order. I think I get it delivered, so I obviously signed up for it on the internet. You can get it in some shops. They do an online edition, which actually practically all these magazines do. But it's nice. I can't, I'm afraid, tell you how much it costs. It costs $12.99 in the US, so it's not going to be cheap in this country, and believe me, it's not cheap in this country, but it's a nice magazine, and you can see from the cover there they have an interest in old cycling as well as new cycling, and it's not a obsessive American bias which you sometimes get in these magazines. Recommended. Now, Mondial, or Mondial, not quite sure how you say that, is produced by Rafa. and this is not the latest issue. This is issue 005, and it comes out every couple of months, every 3 months. Is it a cycling magazine? Well, it sort of is and it sort of isn't. It does contain quite a lot of stuff about the Rapha Cycling Club, which is big in Singapore and Southeast Asia. Who knew? There's always a kind of spread on new Rapha cycling kit, so it's a sort of brochure, it's a sort of magazine, and then it's a collection of rather what shall I say? It's a collection of articles which are not about cycling. This is called Cut, Paste, Win. Can you see that? And I'm going to read this now. It says, gene editing offers the possibility of altering the human genome in ways that could radically benefit us all. But what does the prospect of genetically modified athletes mean for elite sport? So if you're interested in that topic, well, this is in issue 005. And here we have, what is this? A new driver at the wheel. For decades, a single figure dominated Formula One, but the sport has acquired a new owner who is already shaking things up in the paddock to attract a new generation of fans. What might professional cycling learn from this regime change? So it's sort of cycling, it sort of isn't. It's sort of Rapha, and it's a bit too much Rapha, if one's honest. Should you buy it? No. It costs... Do you remember that advert for Stella Artois, which used to say reassuringly expensive, as if you could only drink good beer if you deserved it and could afford it? This magazine is £10, and £10 is too much. Idiots like me buy it, but it's a vanity project for Rapha. They pulled out of Rouleur for reasons that are unknown to me, and then started a magazine which was very similar aesthetic to Rouleur, that in some respects took the best bits of Rouleur and chucked them away, and then put in a whole load of other stuff. And I'm sure there are people who love it. I'm sure there are people who buy it. Well, I bought it, and I buy it every issue. But then I'm a bit weird like that. I wouldn't expect other people to do it, and if you took my recommendation, you wouldn't do it. So should you buy it? Well, you can only get it from Rapha, so unless you're going to go to the Rapha shop, or unless you're going to navigate their website, you're not going to find it anyway, so it's a bit academic. If you want to borrow a copy, contact me. Happy to lend it to you. You'll probably want to give it back, though. Now, the last 3 magazines that I'm going to look at are perhaps still being published, not 100% certain. I'll start with Bone Shaker, and Bone Shaker is one of those magazines, or they probably like to think they're a book as opposed to a magazine. It costs £7. It's available in places like, there's a magazine shop in Brighton that specialises in magazines that nobody wants to buy, and this is available there. I think it's also probably available in Look Mum No Hands. It's probably also available in Condor Cycles in Gray's Inn Road. And it's quite a nice selection of articles, quite a nice selection of pictures. I like buying it, but then I like buying magazines. But I'm not convinced that it's still being published. There was one of these magazines that I sent an article to, and they said, yes, we like it, but this is our last issue, so good luck for the future. Not sure if it was these. It may well have been, or it may have been The Ride, which is another one of these £8 jobbies, available in the cycling magazine shop, the magazine shop in Brighton, where you can buy magazines that aren't sold anywhere else. And this is one of them, and quite similar to Bone Shaker, nicely produced collection of articles, collection of pictures. This is about Jägermaster. Can't actually remember the article, I'm sure I've read it. But it's the sort of thing that looks good on your bookshelf. And let's face it, who among us doesn't want to have magazines and books on our bookshelves that make us look clever or witty or smart or modern or new or fresh or something like that. And lastly, hope you're still with me, this is Conquista, and it's called the Cycling Quarterly, and it costs, Jesus, £12. I've only bought this, I think, once or possibly twice, maybe even 3 times, and it's another nicely produced cycling magazine. There's something about David Miller. He says, "I was not a doper, I told myself. I just injected myself to recover and needed pills to sleep." Well, that describes just about all of us, I should think. And what else? What else is this? The difference between literature and journalism is that journalism is unreadable and literature is not read. Oscar Wilde. Always rely on Oscar Wilde to think of something cycling related. The press, Watson, is a most valuable institution if you only know how to use it. That's Arthur Conan Doyle. Not quite sure what he's doing in this article. Let me see if I can find out now. It says, "For over 100 years, through innumerable scandals, feuds and crises, a handful of visionaries have kept the Tour de France at the pinnacle of the sport, above all by knowing how to tell and sell a story. Owning the story, owning the show." So an article about ASO, the people who currently run the Tour de France, and the original people who started the Tour de France. Actually, I seem to remember that was quite an interesting article. Some great photos. This is, not sure who this is actually. It's Puerto, Joaquin Rodriguez, in 2011. Great picture. So Conquista, it's a very nice magazine. It's very nicely produced. It has very little advertising, so it's not going to last very long, and it costs £12. So I'm just thinking now, if I added up all the money that I've spent on these magazines, I could have bought myself a decent bit of cycling kit. I need to go and look through Cycling Plus and find out what I need to buy. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy these videos, give me a thumbs up. If you don't enjoy these videos, don't give me a thumbs down. If you want to be advised of the next time a video is produced, then subscribe down there. I don't mean there's a button on the table. I mean underneath this video, when you look on YouTube, there is a button that says subscribe. And if you want to make a comment, there should be a button that says comment. And us YouTubers love feedback and we love comments, so give us a comment. See you next time.